بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد قال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وقال الآخر اللهم كانت لي بنت عم كانت أحب الناس إلي وفي رواية كنت أحبها كأشد ما يحب الرجال النساء فأردتها على نفسها فامتنعت مني حتى ألمت بها سنة من السنين فجاءتني فأعطيتها 20 و100 دينار على أن تخلي بيني وبين نفسها ففعلت حتى إذا قدرت عليها وفي رواية فلما قعدت بين رجليها قالت اتق الله ولا تفض الخاتم إلا بحقهم فانصرفت عنها وهي أحب الناس إلي وتركت ذهب الذي أعطيتها اللهم إن كنت فعلت ذلك ابتغاء وجهك فافرج عنا ما نحن فيه فانفرجت الصخرة غير أنهم لا يستطيعون الخروج منها أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. The dua of the second individual who were trapped in the cave. 3 individuals were trapped in the cave. The dua of the second individual we're discussing. One of the lessons we learn from this is the lesson of haya, modesty, being pure and being shy. Last week we discussed the few types of haya and modesty from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and from the people, and then we gave few examples of the haya from the Sahaba radhiyallahu ajma'in and few aqwal and few sayings of the pious predecessors and the Aslaf. Hazrat Fudayl bin Iyad rahmatullahi alayhi says that there are certain signs of a heart being hard. There are certain signs that if is present in a person, that's a sign of having a heart hard. One of them is the dryness of the eyes. Dryness of the eyes, meaning the person, he doesn't shed any tear in the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't shed any tear in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's not able to even display himself as though he's crying to himself, he's crying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second sign of hard heart is inclination towards this world, that the love of this world has overpowered him, is more stronger than any other love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, love of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of the hereafter. So love of this world is also a sign. It is always running after the world, running after the luxury of the world of this, the wealth of this world, and etc. If a person has this sort of love, then that's a sign that this person has a hard heart. And another sign is lack of haya, lack of modesty, lack of haya, lack of shyness. That's also a sign of a person that he has hard heart. And Malik bin Dinar rahmatullahi alayhi says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't punish any heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not punish any heart with anything more than taking out haya from the person, more than taking haya out of that person. So if a person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to punish in this world as well, one way he punishes him is that the haya and modesty and being shy is taken out from this person. We mentioned it from Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullahi alayhi that there's 2 types of haya, that haya from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and also haya from the people. Maulana Masihullah Khan Sahib rahmatullahi alayhi Jalal Abadi, who is a Khalifa of Maulana Shaykh Ali Thanwi rahmatullahi alayhi, in one of his Dars of Bukhari, he explains that haya is actually of 3 types. He brings 3 types of haya. He says haya anil haqq, which is referring to haya from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says haya anil khalq, haya from the creation, from the people, which we alhamdulillah have managed to discuss. And one other type of haya he mentions is haya anil nafs. Haya anil nafs means a person has modesty and he feels shy about himself, about himself. And he says that this is such that a person doesn't even, he's alone in his own room, he's alone in his own home, but he doesn't be naked. he feels even shy being naked or in front of himself as well. There's nobody else there. There's nobody else around. But even being naked in front of himself, he feels he has this shy and being shy, and he's modest from that as well. So this is another haya. So if a person has this sort of haya, that he doesn't expose himself in front of himself, he doesn't leave his body uncovered in front of himself, how will he do that in front of others? How would he expose his body and something in front of others? Even in front of others, he'll be bahaya, and he'll be modest, and he won't expose himself in front of others as well. Having haya, being modest, as we mentioned, being modest in our clothing, in our speech, in our conversations as well. So it's important that when we have a conversation, we be very careful of what we talk about and what we discuss and who is around us. So if the mother and the father are there, they should be very mindful about those people. If the children are around, they should have those conversation, which is also be modest in their conversation as well. They shouldn't be talking about such topics and discussions which will not be very relevant for the children at that time. So even when you're talking with the children as well, yes, when it comes to ruling and masail, we can be open with them, but they have to have certain limits. We have to stay within the certain limits. Some people say that we don't have any barriers between our children. We talk about whatever we want. We discuss whatever topics we want. Now, even in that, we have to have limits. There are certain limits in everything. If we stay within the boundaries, everything stays structured, everything stays united and correct. Otherwise, when we don't have any boundaries, then everybody will, it'll cause chaos, and it'll cause a lot of problems. So when we have conversations as well, we should also be very careful of what sort of conversations we have, who is around us. And at the same time, about in clothing, there are certain things that we need to remember, that our deen, the principles of our deen is not on what we think is correct and what our mind says that's correct and that's fine. Our deen and the principles of our deen is based from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our Quran and Ahadith. Nowadays people say, or some people have this thing in mind that, okay, if this seems modest, in my understanding that means it's modest. It doesn't matter if it's immodest according to the Sunnah and according to the Quran and Hadith. One example of this is the clothing. Some people say that, as long as my body, the skin is covered, it's fine. Even though if it's showing the shapes of the body, it doesn't matter. That's, as we mentioned last week, that if the body shape is showing, then that's against the haya, that's against haya. Now we have to be very careful of what we wear and what we make our children wear as well. When we buying clothes for our children, we should be very careful of what types of clothes we buy for our children. Yes, at times there may be a reason that why we need to make them wear such clothing. But if there's no reason and the child is understanding now, we should make them wear correct clothes from young age. So they feel comfortable in that from a young age in those sort of clothing. So as they grow up, they become normal and used to that as well. Otherwise, what happens is that when we make them wear clothing which are revealing or tight and etc., then when we grow up and all of a sudden we put loose clothing in front of them or correct clothing in front of them, they won't wear it. They won't, because they're not used to it. So we have to be very careful of what sort of clothes we wear and what sort of clothes we make our children wear as well. Now when we wear correct clothing, this also has an impact on our character, it has an impact on our behavior, it has an impact on us. There is a female blogger, she's a travel blogger. Before she accepted Islam, the COVID zamana, during the COVID lockdowns, as they say, the COVID zamana has been difficult for people. But however, there's so many positive in people's life as well. So she travels around the world. So whilst this lockdown took place, she was stranded in a Muslim country, majority Muslim country. She was already reading into Islam and religions, etc. So that became a reason for her to accept Islam later on. So she says about, in the beginning when accepted Islam, to change your wardrobe immediately, change your habits is a difficult task. It's a difficult thing. It's not simple for everybody to do that. However, she said that at the beginning, for me to expose certain part of my body, it wasn't a major issue to me. It didn't make me feel bad. But recently, as I started wearing the scarf and covering my hair, for me to expose even that part of the leg that I used to expose before is becoming difficult for me now. So wearing the scarf is not that you just wear the scarf only and you leave the arms showing, or you leave the leg showing. No, wearing the scarf also means that you cover the rest of the body as well. We have some people, that you see them that they're wearing the niqab, but the rest of the body, they're wearing the normal tights and walking around. If we cover ourselves correctly, then inshallah we're staying within the boundaries, within the limits, following the sunnah clothing, sunnah way of talking and dressing and speeches and etc. Inshallah, then we will see the benefits of this in this world as well. And definitely in the hereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept reward for this. In one hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he explains about 7 types of people who will be gaining the shade under the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are 7 in this hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. There are 7 types of people that will get the shade under the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of them is وَرَجُلًا دَعَتْهُ إِمْرَأَةٌ ذَاتَ مَنْصَبٍ وَجَمَالٍ فَقَالَ إِنِّي خَافُ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. We were mentioning that the second individual, when he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the wasila and the means that he took was of this quality that he had inside himself. That there was a time where I was about to fulfill my desires with this cousin sister of mine, but she reminded me of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So because of reminding me of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also we mentioned that because of the quality of haya, I stopped myself from committing this sin. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that if a person is such that a beautiful woman, a woman with beauty, with intelligence, she has wealth, etc. And she seduces this person, she invites him towards him. But what does he say? Inni akhafullah, I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if a person has this quality, that all the means are available for that person to fulfill his desires, everything is possible for him to commit that sin. But then he reminds himself, or he's reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then immediately he says, I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a person has this quality, then on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him the shade under his throne, inshallah. So what we learn from this dua is that we should try to build the taqwa in our lives. We should try to be modest from ourselves, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the creation, that if we have this quality of modesty and being haya and bahaya, then we will be able to fulfill the obligations, we will be able to fulfill the rights of ourselves, we will be able to fulfill the rights of others, we will be able to fulfill the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is 1-2 lessons that we learn from this hadith of from the dua of the second individual. Now, when we try to bring this quality of haya in our lives as well, as we mentioned few ways, a few methods last week, there's also certain du'as that we learn from the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. One of the dua that we can learn the Arabic, or at least have the English in our mind, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam narrated in Nasai Sharif that Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min sharri sam'i. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min sharri sam'i wa sharri basari wa sharri lisani wa sharri qalbi wa sharri maniyyi. That, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I seek refuge, I seek protection from the evil of my seeing, from the sam'i, from the evil of my hearing, from my ears, the evil of my ears. Meaning, I don't want to hear anything evil of using my ears, with my ears. So I seek protection, the evil of my hearing. Wa sharri basari, and also seek the protection from the evil of my eyes, from the evil of my seeing and my sight. Wa sharri lisani, and I seek protection from the evil of my tongue, from what I speak and from my speech. Wa sharri qalbi, and I also seek protection from the evil of my qalb and my heart. Wa sharri mani, and I also seek protection from the evil of my mani and from my sperm and my passions that I have. So this is also one dua a person can make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is, seek the protection from the evil of these parts of the body. So this will help a person to become bahaya and with modesty. Another narration of that Nabi, once a young Sahabi came to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam seeking permission to commit zina. That, oh, Nabi of Allah, give me the permission to commit zina with this woman. So there's a discussion where Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said that, look, would you like this if this woman was your mother, or if she was your sister, or if she was your partner, or if she was your daughter, etc., if she was your auntie? In all of them, he said, no, I wouldn't like this person, for anybody to do such act with this woman if she was to be my mother, daughter, or sister, or wife, or auntie. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that, look, she's also a mother of somebody, daughter of somebody, maybe a partner of somebody, an auntie of somebody. So then Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam put his hand on the chest of this Sahabi and he made dua for this Sahabi. And the dua that we learn from this is that what we can, if we change the pronoun of the dua, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made the dua for this individual, saying that, oh Allah, pure his heart, purify his heart. So we can change the pronoun of this dua and we can say that, oh Allahumma tahir qalbi, Allahumma tahir qalbi, that oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, purify my heart. Purify my heart. Waghfir dhanbi, and forgive my sins. Waghfir dhanbi. Wahassin farji, and protect my private parts. Protect my private parts. So the hadith says that this individual, this sahabi, never ever thought towards committing any such act, anything after that as well, because of the barakat of this dua. So we can also make this dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that oh Allah, purify my heart, forgive my sins, and protect my private parts, especially living in this day and age. We have to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for ourselves, for our children. They're going through hard times. We learn in the hadith again from Abu Mas'ud Uqba bin Amir radiallahu anhu, who was from the place of Badr. He's known as Al-Badri as well. So he says that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that inna mimma adrakan nas min kalamin nabuwa til ula. What we take from the kalam and from the speech and from the teaching of the previous prophets. There are many things that we learn from the previous prophets. One of the things that we learn from all the previous prophets is إِذَا لَمْ تَسْتَحِي فَاصْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. That if you do not have haya, if you are not modest, if you are not shy, then do whatever you wish. When a person does not have this quality of haya and being shy, then he does whatever he wishes. And you see nowadays that they are making things permissible, which even people who don't have any faith, but they have sound mind, even they themselves are disgusted about this. That how can you make this thing permissible, where you want to fulfill your desires with your own family members, or you want to fulfill your desires with non-humans? How can you make this possible? And so when a person does have haya, then he has no limits and he has no boundaries in his life, and he goes beyond his boundaries and beyond his limits, and then he makes, comes out with such things. If you look into the story from the Quran and from the previous prophets, Lut alayhi salatu wasalam time, the people at that time, they were fulfilling the desire with their own genders. Nowadays, because of no haya, because of no limits, they have gone beyond that. They have gone even beyond that, not only fulfilling desire with your own genders, they are, you can't even utter those sort of things that they are trying to make permissible in the place where we are sitting right now. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give this ourselves the correct understanding. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us bahaya as well, to have this modesty in our lives, being modest from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being modest from ourselves, being modest from the creation as well. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put this quality in ourselves. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put the quality in our children as well, and all those who are going to come till the day of judgment. Our dua shouldn't just limit to ourselves. It shouldn't be just limited to our children. Our dua should go beyond that. Grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all the way till the day of judgment. Inshallah, we will see the effect of our du'as then. Our dua, alhamdulillah, we are protected. We are in the boundaries of Islam because of the dua of our forefathers. They must have made dua for us. That's why we are, alhamdulillah, within the boundaries of Islam. So that's like that as well, the way we make dua to ourselves, for our own immediate children, immediate progeny. We should also make dua for our great-grandchildren, all the way till the day of judgment. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect their iman as well, the qualities that a person deserves as a believer and it requires as a believer. We should make dua for them as well, that Allah put the qualities in them as well. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to practice upon what has been heard and what has been mentioned. And inshallah next week we'll move on to the dua of the second individual. Before that, there's one more point to mention from the part where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that the rock moved. So what we can learn from the place where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that the rock moved, inshallah we'll mention that one more point, then we'll move on to the dua of the third individual. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make these durus a means of bringing positive changes in our life and accept all our efforts. Allahumma ameen. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد وبارك وسلم جزا الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم وارنا مناسكنا وتب علينا انك انت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين جزاكم الله خيرا.